Dave Franco's The Rental, now available to stream on YouTube, Amazon, and Google Play. Stars Dan Stevens, Allison Brie, to name a few people in this. There was one name immediately that caught my attention with this movie, and I didn't think about it until about halfway through. But like about half hour into it, maybe 45 minutes, I'm thinking to myself, like, the character building and relationships in this movie remind me an awful lot of a Joe Swanberg movie. And I looked it up. I paused it. I looked it up on my phone. Joe Swanberg happened to co-write the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, it blew my high for a second right there. It really did. But the cool thing about that, though, is I'm a big Joe Swanberg fan. I don't think you two are very familiar with his work because I've brought him up in the past before.
I know the short he did for that VHS horror anthology series. I know the short he did. That's all I've ever seen of his. That's it.
His most mainstream movie, I mean, Drinking Buddies with Anna Kendrick and Jake Johnson became popular because it was on Netflix. That's where it got its launch. Probably his most mainstream effort was that horror movie, You're Next. That was probably his most with the pig mask.
Oh, then I've seen that movie, actually.
Yeah, yes. Okay. I think he was in that even too. That's probably his most. I don't think he directed that one, but I think he helped write it.
I think he wrote it,
but
yeah.
I think it was Ty West who made that. Ty West or Adam Wingard. Anyway, Joe Swanberg's excellent. I've always loved him as a writer and a director. He was one of the main pioneers of mumblecore as a film movement. And I really appreciate his ability to kind of write these like flawed Arrested Development characters that he's so good at. He's been doing a little bit of TV recently. He hasn't made a movie in a couple of years. But I was happy to see that him and Dave Franco linked up on this because I guess they worked together on Swanberg's show Easy. And that's kind of how they met. And then they wrote this movie together. This is kind of an interesting movie just because of the fact that it starts out like a drama.
Yeah.
It starts out like a drama with like a tinge of suspense and infidelity and secrets. And then it bleeds into kind of a stalker thriller. And I'm going to say this before I throw it over to you, Joe. I think this movie works better as a dramatic thriller than a stalker thriller on its own. I think this movie is a better drama than it is a thriller. What say you, Joe?
I agree and disagree. I think I'll say this. The first 2/3 where it's like a drama predominantly, like it's focusing on these characters and the flaws that they all have on this trip that they're going together on, these couples. I think it's great. I think it's the best part of the movie. However, when it switches gears and it goes from being like this drama, almost a bit of a thriller in some aspects too during those early parts, and then it becomes a full-out horror film. I knew when it did that, I was like, damn, this is when people are going to probably lose, like, this is then when people came into this movie and they were like, when the hell is the horror going to start? Oh, finally. Or you're going to have people that go, oh, fuck. Like, what? God, I got to stop saying it. I'm sorry.
We've been doing this show for 4 months already. You know we get one a show. We're not going to stay until Christmas now.
When it switches gears to horrors, they're just like, oh, like, this kind of came out of nowhere. That's kind of how I felt about Hereditary. For me, though, I was fine with the shift. I was kind of like, all right, well, this is fine. I don't mind switching gears here because, like, they kind of tease it throughout the, first 2/3 of the movie, and then it finally goes, like, full on towards the end, and I thought that was fine. But I completely agree. The best parts of this movie is when it's actually being a drama. I think Dave Franco, for a directorial debut, did a great job at directing these actors like Dan Stevens. I think he killed it in this movie. He's probably my favorite actor in this. I'm a big fan of his work. I loved him in The Guest, and I'm glad he's getting more and more work, both TV and movies. The
Guest is great.
Oh, yeah.
The Guest is great.
Yeah, man. So I thought, like, for a directorial debut, Franco did pretty good. He does a great job with atmosphere, and even, like, when it gets to horror later on, like, his jump scares, like, he uses them sparingly, and even when there's a jump scare, it's not like, oh, jump scare, there goes the cat that, went, eh. No, it's jump scare, oh, God, here comes the hammer into a person's head. Like, it's just like, oh, God. He does a great job, I think, at balancing both horror and drama, but I will agree with you. The drama's way better than the horror parts of this movie.
Dominic?
Yeah, I gotta agree with Joe here. I'm not a big horror guy. I'm actually, that's an understatement. I don't like horror at all. There's too much horror in the world for me, and I'm also just a huge scaredy cat. But that's really the truth. I'm just a huge scaredy cat. So this is already like, oh no, and I was actually like getting scared there because my tolerance is extremely low for horror stuff. But I got to agree with Joe. I was more so digging the drama, which, by the way, Alison Brie, she is just. I mean, the whole cast was competent. This was a competently made movie, and that sounds like a really, you know, sarcastic kind of backhanded compliment. But no, legitimately, this was a very decently made movie. Actually, I should say the cinematography punches way above its weight class. There's some actually legitimately gorgeous shots here, and I'm like, damn, this far outpaces
it's only
everything.
just at this like rental house, this Airbnb they're staring at. Basically, it's only there. Like, and he does a great job at shooting inside and even the outside scenes. Like, I mean, it's just great.
For sure,
especially the
photography.
Dark.
The photography and the framing in this movie, it is in a different class than the movie itself.
Yeah.
It's really good. So I guess shout out to Christian Sprenger, who's a cinematographer here, I guess, according to Wikipedia. And Alison Brie as well. The cast was quite good, not bad. I actually they were playing into their characters quite well, but it just shows how Alison Brie is just acting, freaking leagues beyond all of them. Just from her natural aura. Also, I have a small crush on her. But anyway, but yeah, the switch from drama to horror doesn't rub me the wrong way at all, because it had been building up. I actually genuinely appreciated, like the far away moments where it's the eventual. I don't know how deep. I don't know if it's a spoiler, but the eventual bad guy here is like observing the characters, the main characters from afar with the breathing. I'm like, hey, that's pretty good. I actually, that's tension. I appreciated that. But then when they finally switch to like slasher stuff, and the hand is revealed, not so much revealed, but more so like full on like flasher with the trench coat wide open. I get it that they had been building up to it, so it's not that big of a surprise. It's more so the fact that Franco and the writers, Swanberg and Franco decided to go that direction. To me, it would have felt way more, at the least, like clever, because I guess they were expecting something really clever here, as opposed to like, oh, okay, so this is a slasher or whatever. But with how the movie actually went in the final act and the ending and all that, it's like, yeah, fine, it was competent. Like, sure, it's some clever kills, clever whatever here, clever way to end it. It's semi clever, competent, but you could have done so much more here, because the drama was actually kind of engrossing.
Yeah, the
situations that you put people in, I should say, like the sex that was portrayed here wasn't just arbitrary Camp Crystal Lake, whatever sex to be murdered. No, that actually played into like the relationships, played into the very peculiar situation of like, well, we can't call the cops. Also, we have to like slowly kind of reveal our situation to our actual significant others.
Yeah.
Whatever. What do we do here? I appreciate that. Go ahead, Joe.
It put a haste on everything too.
Yeah.
I saw people complaining about how, like, well, if only the characters were likable, I think I would like the movie more. I'm like, no. I'm like, I think that's what makes the drama. I'm like, I think that's what makes the drama so much better, is because like they're not really like totally likable people. They have flaws to them, and like watching them interact with that and trying to work it out. I think that's what makes it really good. Like, if it was like the best people of all time coming to this cabin, and then these unfortunate things happen in the last like 20, 25 minutes, whatever. It's like, that wouldn't be as interesting. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know. I just felt like people were the criticism I saw of that, both critically and just audience-wise, reading some of them, I was just like, I kind of disagree with that.
I think when expectations are just so low for, I guess, James Franco, that when anyone makes something competent, it's like a masterpiece in their eyes or whatever. And it's all right. It's a decent movie. I don't know. Steve, you wanted to close us out or something?
Yeah, I mostly concur. I do think I was really happy to see that Swanberg wrote this, because you can definitely sense his degree of character building, which he's good at. I've seen almost all, if not all, of his movies, and he's made a handful. He was actually one of the ones. It's worth noting, Swanberg was kind of the one who, quote unquote, discovered Greta Gerwig.
Really?
Back in the day, back in like 2005, they made the movie LOL back in like 2005, 2006. And then my favorite Greta Gerwig movie is her and Joe Swanberg together. They acted it, he directed it. It's called Nights and Weekends. And So he kind of got her career off the ground even before Noah Baumbach with Francis Ha. That's neither here nor there, though. I think Dave Franco's an interesting director to watch in terms of just a guy who's clearly got a visual eye and an eye for coaching, like coaching actors. I think you could say he's got a talent for that because of the way that these actors, the camaraderie they create in the early parts. But I felt though by the end of this movie, like it went down that route, okay? And it's not offensive in a way. It's not bad. But it doesn't really give you a ton of closure to begin with. It kind of winds up becoming generic and almost vague in some respects that isn't really satisfying. And I thought the voyeurism aspect too, I think it was brought up late enough and they didn't do a whole ton with the voyeuristic aspect with the security cameras. They didn't do a lot of cool like Adam Rifkin look trickery that I thought they could have done with that. And I think that's a problem a lot of people have, and I know this is a Franco movie. I know it's Franco's name on it, but this is a problem a lot of people, even myself, have with some Joe Swanberg movies. They almost build and build, and his movies are generally not very long. They're anywhere from like 70 to like 100 minutes. They're not long. But like his movies, like they build very well in the beginning, but then they plateau. And they don't really come to any sort of like, some sort of like riveting climax or a climax that at least complements the beginning. And I think that's kind of what happened here. I think it's a really good stepping stone for Dave Franco. I think he flexes some impressive filmmaking chops here. But I think that in terms of like subtext and payoff, this movie lacks. Yeah. And that's where I was kind of left wanting more. It's inoffensive at an 88 minutes though, at like 85 without credits or so. It's an inoffensive watch. I wouldn't advise against seeing it, but having said all that, it's the word of the day over here, and I think the word of the movie. It's a competent 2.5 out of 4 stars.
Oh,
damn! You took the words right out of my mouth. It's that, and it's more so the fact that the 2.5 stars, or rather the lack, or the because we do a 5-star scale, a 4-star scale. It's more so the the lack of stars at the end there. The stars that are missing really affects it way more because there was so much potential in the story and how it was building up that sadly what could have been like a really strong, like really clever, like Get Out level, debut. Was that because that was his first movie, right? Was Jordan Peele's?
Yeah,
Peele's, yeah.
Get Out. Yeah, exactly. It could have been a Get Out level like phenomenon. If he had maybe not phenomenon, but level of like quality there. But instead, it just winds up being just being competent. So yeah, I got to match Steve 2.5 out of 4 there.
For me, I mean, like, coming off of like I'm glad you brought up Jordan Peele because like we recently just had like a ton of a ton of actors start directing and just having amazing directorial debuts. Jordan Peele, Olivia Wilde, Bradley Cooper. I mean, just like, wow, you guys got something up your sleeve. The people you've worked with, you must have been copying some notes down, like, while working with them. And then, like, it's sad to say that Dave Franco, like, he comes close, but not as close as they did, especially for Jordan Peele, if we're going to compare horror to horror here. But for me, I did enjoy it. I had a good time, and, like, I'm glad it was kept short. Honestly, if this went on any longer, too, especially because, like, I do agree with you, like, about Joe Swanberg's writing. It does feel like this movie does plateau the minute it gets to horror. Like, it doesn't really get better than that. It's just like, oh, okay, now we're a horror film, and it's just that from there on out. I'm just kind of just going through the motions watching it. For me, though, it's going to be 3 stars. I did enjoy it, and I thought it was just a good, easy watch. It's a lot of fun, and, like, for just a quick rental, like, I don't think you can go wrong.